All right, and Kristen. All right, good evening, everyone. I'm not trying to be mean by muting you guys. I really don't want to, I don't want anyone's like background conversations to come out, more so because this is being recorded. But welcome, everyone. My name is Dr. Monica Gilbert. I am super happy to see a lot of you here. Are you guys parents? Are you guys therapists? Are you guys therapists and parents? I'm sure there's also teachers. I always get tons of teachers here. Put it in the chat. Tell me where you're located, if it's here in Miami and Broward. I would love to know a little bit about you. Okay, parents in Miami. Well, welcome, welcome. How about the rest of you? And we'll give it at least like another minute so everyone can come in. Okay, parent, teacher in Pembroke Pines, parent from Miramar, parent from Miami, another parent from Miami. All right, perfect. So as I mentioned, my name is Dr. Monica Gilbert. We do these webinars once a month. And the reason for us doing these webinars is just to provide the community, provide you guys with resources, provide you guys with education on different things, and just to have a nice chat. Today, we're going to talk a little bit more about going back to school. And I have Priya here. Priya, can you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, my name is Priya Ramdin. I am a BCABA with Crystal Minds. I've been working in the field for about 8 years. And I've worked with a variety of clients from, I think the youngest was 1.5 years, all the way up to 19. Back to school season. I know there's a lot of questions. I know there's a lot going on. And we're here to help you with any questions that you might have and open the conversation for anything that you might be thinking about.
So, thank you, Priya. And Priya does a lot of our, school training. So perhaps you've seen her around. So we're going to talk a little bit about some common problems or challenges. I like to use the word challenges rather than problems that our little ones or older ones face going back to school. So please jot down your questions in our chat box. Any questions you have, please put them down in the box. And we actually put it out there in social media. And I also did like a question box, and we got some questions that we're going to go over today, but please feel free to start putting them on the chat box so that we can go over them. So just to tell you a little bit about who we are for those of you who are completely new to these webinars. So we provide different services. One of the services that we provide is ABA therapy. We also do parent training as part of the ABA therapy, parent coaching, and we also do groups. So we have social skills group, we have adult groups, we have adolescent groups, we have a couple of different groups. We also do psychological and psychoeducational assessments in the sister company, which is Crystal Mind Psychological Services. And we do mental health treatment, so individual therapy, group therapy. And also in that, we do school consultations. So those are just some of the services that we provide. You can always contact us if you have any questions, if you want to ask if we take your insurance or anything else you need, please make sure that you contact us. So is it free? Well, it isn't free, but if you're using your insurance, it almost becomes free. So those are the services that we provide. I mean, sometimes we use private pay, sometimes we do take some scholarships that cover it. So those are some of the things that we do. But you can definitely send us an email or contact us and we can speak a little bit more about it. Okay, so remember, jot down your questions in the chat box and we will get to them. So, Priya, I just wanted to ask you overall, how has it been going back to school? I know you don't have any kiddos, but with the kiddos that you work with, what are some general challenges that you have found?
So I have a client who's starting kindergarten this year, and
Mhm.
she would tell me, I'm feeling nervous. So we addressed it. I said, what is it that is making you feel nervous? What if I don't have any friends? So one of the things that we talked about is like, remember, everybody is starting kindergarten, right? We don't know who's going to be in your class. Maybe there'll be some friendly faces, or maybe it's an opportunity to make new friends. So we have the anxiety when it comes to making friends and the social interactions. Um,
I love that well, first of all, I think it's amazing that this kindergarten was able to communicate why they felt anxious, because I think a lot of our kiddos don't perhaps know, right? They feel that the little butterflies, their little bubbles in their belly, and they feel a little anxious, but they don't really know why. Like, why am I feeling this way? And for that kiddo to actually be able to communicate and say, this is the reason why, that's amazing. I also love that you kind of gave them like a different perspective, right? Like, oh, you're also going to, like, it can be exciting, right? Instead of so nervous, like what's going to happen, think about like the great things that you're going to get from this new challenge, and that you also normalized it. So you said, everyone's starting new, even the teachers are starting new. I'm sure that for the teachers that are here, you guys also felt a little nervous, starting with your new class, because it's a new class, they're new parents, all of these novelties.
And one thing I'd like to point out is even if a child isn't at the point where they can identify their own feelings, sometimes if you offer them options, like, do you feel happy? Are you feeling sad? Are you feeling this? Where they can actually think about it themselves and try to relate. If the child is younger, try to use the more basic emotions like sad, surprised, angry. But once you kind of get to the source of what they're feeling, sometimes I feel parents assume they know what the kids are feeling, but we want to encourage the communication, that they express themselves, even from a young age.
Definitely. I think this is something that every parent does. I do this, I think, sometimes as well, where we kind of project our own emotions. So if we ourselves are kind of introverts and we don't like changes or going into big groups, we may feel like, oh my gosh, my defenseless child is gonna like going to this big group. The reality is that, they may not be as anxious as you think they'll be.
Maybe they're excited to get back to see all of their friends they haven't seen since last year. Or something that I've also seen is summer camps. They get to continue the friendships from school into the summer camp. So now they're excited to be in the same class again. So some
Right.
kids are very excited to just get started.
Right. So I have a question here in the chat. How can parents support their children in managing anxiety about returning into the classroom? So exactly what we were speaking about. I think in some way, just like Priya related right now, it's important to not dismiss it. Because I see a lot of parents say something like, oh, don't worry about it, you're going to be okay. Well, let's not dismiss it. Let's allow them to communicate what they are anxious about. Right. So what is it that makes you anxious? What about the classroom makes you anxious? When you do that, first, the child feels like they're being heard. Secondly, you're really getting to the core of it to see what it is that makes them anxious. And then you can kind of provide them like other alternatives, well, this may happen, but also this may happen. So, maybe you don't meet other kids and you're alone, but you may also meet other kids or a best friend that will stay with you, throughout the year. So give them like other alternatives that they can think about as well. I don't know if you have any other tips, Priya.
Um, I like the perspective one. Another thing is to get them excited about it. Show them their backpack, have them pick out their outfit for school. If they're a little girl, how are they going to do their hair? Like, oh my God, what do you think your teacher's going to be like? I'm sure she's going to be great. Kind of hype up the experience to get them more excited for it. So it's not something to fear, but oh my God, I'm such a big girl now. Or oh my God, I'm getting older. I'm having more responsibility. Let's say they're going from middle school to high school, right? What are some perks that go for high school? Let's say they're starting elementary school. Like, oh, no more nap time. You're a big girl now. Now you have recess with the big kids on the big playground, and try to hear their feelings, validate them, but also show them another perspective and get them excited for the things that they should be excited for.
Yes, definitely. And sometimes we do have kiddos that suffer from anxiety, right? They just have because one thing is to have like this normal kind of jitters or stress about something new, and then there are kids that just really have anxiety. They meet the diagnosis criteria for anxiety. So I would say remember to practice the coping skills. So whether it's breathing skills or progressive relaxation skills, whatever skills your child has that allow them to stay calm or calm down in those stressful situations, remind them that they have that they're able to cope with it. I think that that's another important one as well.
And to remind them they have it, but also that they could do it in a discreet way.
Yes.
That there's a way, let's say you're in class, that you can calm yourself down where it doesn't have to be embarrassing, especially when you get to kids who are preteens and teenagers. They start to get embarrassed a little bit more. And one of the good tips that I like to recommend to high schoolers is if you feel like you need to fidget with something because you're feeling anxious, put it in a hoodie pocket. Then no one will see it, Then you can use your coping skill to calm down, but at the same time, you have the privacy.
Exactly.
Handling it on your own.
Absolutely. I love that. I really love that. I see some teachers here. Teachers, don't be shy. Ask us questions. What questions do you have? I'm sure that, as smooth as you want, these 2 weeks to be, I'm sure that there have been some challenges. So please bring them up. Let's talk about it. That's how we learn how to, kind of resolve these things. As you guys are kind of typing there, and by the way, you can also type it in the chat in Spanish, and I will respond to it in Spanish and in English. Okay, so these are some of the questions that I received. As you guys see, I didn't, make it too pretty. I just kind of just pasted it there because I didn't have time. But let's go over some of these questions. So the first question that we received is, my child is getting bullied and I already told him to hit if needed. Not sure if this is the right thing to do. What do you think about that, Priya?
Well, I feel like she wouldn't be the first parent to tell their child to hit back, right? But also, what is the correct way to handle it, right? When you think about it, children aren't the only ones who have to deal with bullies. Maybe in our everyday life, we deal with individuals who have a bit of a bullying behavior towards ourselves. So the important thing is that we have to address it, right? So to recommend to your child that you have to address it with the bully. You have to be assertive and you have to stand up for yourself. I wouldn't say immediately just hit back, right? Because I would never want to encourage a behavior that can also get them in trouble. Maybe the teacher only sees them hit back and now they're in trouble. Maybe they're older and it goes to detention or suspension, right? So to stand up to yourself and be assertive and to address the behavior. Like, I don't like that you did that, or this made me feel uncomfortable, or that wasn't nice. Please keep your hands off of me. Something where they address it with the bully. If they continue, then to go to an adult. I've had teachers come to me that's like, it's always this person hit this person or this person hit this person. So I feel like it is important to teach your child, like, you have to address it with the person that it just happened with. And then if it continues to happen, then seek more help from it.
Right, absolutely. Well, I want to ask those of you who are here in this room with us, what do you usually tell your kids? And don't be shy, nobody's judging here. But what do you think is a good thing to tell your child if he comes home and he tells you, oh my gosh, someone's bullying me? Or teachers, what do you usually think about that concept? I definitely agree with you. And I've been in that situation, before personally. And I think the most important thing is to teach our kids how to be assertive. We have to teach our kids not to be aggressive, but to be assertive. There is a difference between being aggressive and assertive. And definitely, we're always going to deal with bullies, and sometimes they're bigger and stronger than us. So for those parents that say, oh, just tell the child to hit the bully back, okay, that may help. But what happened if the bully's bigger and really hits them, right? Then nothing really gets resolved. So, and as adults, we get bullied all the time, right? We were just talking about this off camera, by coworkers, by bosses, by whatever, by different people that we interact with, by our family members. And we have to understand how to put boundaries, how to say, nope, you're not going to cross this line. You're not going to do this anymore without, having to hit them, or being passive, which being passive is more like not doing anything and ignoring them. So I really don't believe in that concept of just, oh, ignore the bully and turn around. No, you have to be assertive. What do the rest of you think? Put it in the chat. Let us know. Okay, we have here a comment. I think the concept and term shouldn't be used as frequently as it has been lately, especially with our youngest children. Not everything is a bullying situation. Yes, you are absolutely right. I do see that happen a lot. I don't want to bring up like, what is it called now? Like the cancel culture or something. Is that
Culture.
yeah, it's sort of like the cancel culture, right? Like everything is a bully and everything is like a big deal, right? I totally agree. Like not everything is really bullying, and not everything is this kind of like, sometimes it's just like one isolated incident, right? So definitely, I think that's important. Thank you for bringing that up. What do you think about that, Priya?
I think that it's a very hot term right now, so people are very quick to use it. Not to say that people aren't being bullied and things like that, but I think each situation is different, right? Yeah. And the people that it's between is different. Is it reoccurring, or is it constructive criticism that is not taken well because some people don't want to take constructive criticism, Yeah. So I'm a firm believer it's not always what you say, but it's how you say it.
I already know my life.
So when it comes to a bullying situation, there's a lot out there, and I definitely see the cancel culture myself. But instead of just slapping a bullying label on it, I want to look at the situation and what exactly is going on.
Right, and every situation is different. And the thing is that if we overuse the word bully, then it loses its true meaning and its effect as well. But I totally agree with you. Sometimes it is being misused. So let's go to our other question. How to generalize skills. Student can do the skill at home, but not at school. So that's a more like kind of ABA kind of thing. So what do you think, Priya?
Practice is a huge part of it, right? And it really would depend on what the skill is.
Mm-hmm.
Is it writing? Is it like something physical, like a gross motor skill? Is it, I've had parents that are like, oh, he can't open his own lunchbox. Like at school, he doesn't know how to open his lunchbox, but at home, he feeds himself just fine. So really, I think it depends on the skill. And what kind of hands-on help he's getting at school, right? Yeah. So let's say the skill that's not generalizing is something that his teacher can help with. Kind of maybe speaking to the teacher and addressing the issue, and then kind of describing what you're doing at home to get the desired behavior.
Yeah, and I think there always has to be a collaboration. And that's something that I've always been in awe about, how little collaboration sometimes we have with pediatricians, with other therapists, with schools, with teachers. I feel like in this society, everything is so fast that we don't have time to speak, to communicate. So, like I see my kid's teacher like in line, and I'm like, oh, hi. And then we have like quick, conversations. And we just don't have that time unless we have like a parent-teacher meeting. And I don't know about you, but I've seen that some parents have had such difficulties getting that parent-teacher meeting. And then it becomes really difficult to generalize these skills. So what am I doing at home that I want my, the teacher to know about so she can do that in school as well? Like, for example, my daughter, she goes to Montessori Academy, and one of the things, we took her to an orthopedic doctor because, she was like, her feet were like inward. So he said, she has to sit a certain way. She has to sit like, ballet style and not like this. So I had to tell the teacher that, because in circle time and in most of her school days, she's with a teacher. So thank God I had such a great relationship with the teacher, and all the teachers in that school are great. But I was able to tell her that in order for these skills that I'm teaching her at home, which is something simple, like sitting correctly, can also generalize there. So I think that communication has to happen as well.
I think that's a great point about the communication between parent and teacher. Sometimes when I'm working in schools, I overhear the teacher's point of view, and I'm not a parent, but then I go home and I hear the parent's point of view. And I think the idea has to be, we're both on team child, right? One isn't criticizing the other, one isn't purposely doing a bad job. You know what I mean? We're on team child, and if there's a behavior or something that needs to be fixed, we need to find a way to effectively communicate. Right? I've heard feedback from teachers where it's like, sometimes parents give them so much, like paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs, where they don't have time to implement everything, right? Or I've heard from teachers where they message the parent and the parent doesn't message back. So there has to be a sweet middle where it's effective functional communication about what's really important to be on team child.
Yeah, I love that, team child. So let's all be on team child. How about this next question says, how we encourage our children to advocate? Oh, how do we encourage our children to advocate for themselves? What do you think?
Well, obviously the different environments we're going to address this question differently. But let's say you're at home, right? And your child lets their sibling kind of push all over them or take their treats or things like that. But you as a parent keep on stepping in to stopping that from happening. You have to encourage the child to say stop, to say no, to speak up, like we said, to advocate for themselves, but also to be assertive, where they can stand up for themselves and say, listen, this is mine and you can't have it. Or this is mine, and if you like it, please ask nicely, right? But if you keep stepping in every time it happens, they're not going to get that practice. And sometimes starting the skill at home and then developing elsewhere, right? Yeah. Start it with a sister or start it with a cousin, and then they go to summer camp and then they have to deal with it with a peer. But they're more used to dealing with the peer one-on-one because mommy's not always there to step in.
Yeah. And you know what, I think, Priya, that sometimes parents don't know how much we step in and help our children in that environment. I had a parent that I was working with, and I asked her, I said, look, whenever I'm going to have this conversation with your child, and whenever you feel like you're going to step in, I want you to tally on a sheet of paper. This was like a 30-minute session, and she must have tallied like 20 times. And when she looked at it, and we discussed it, she was like, I didn't know that I stepped in so many times. Like 20 times I wanted to step into the conversation. And I said, yes, and awareness is number one. Becoming aware that we do this. And it's kind of like just biologically, I think that we just, as parents, we want to step in. But when we do that, we're not teaching them to advocate for themselves, right? We have to teach them and empower them to advocate for themselves.
Speaking about the stepping in, I have parents who are like, when you're teaching the skill, they're like, I just want to do it. I just want to make the peanut butter sandwich. Like, oh, I could just do it so quickly. But it's like, yes, you could, but they're developing the skill for the future. I always say, like, the child and the parent, they have their own language, but the child needs to show that language to the whole world. Needs to speak the world's language. And if you step in every time, it's going to be a little bit harder.
Absolutely. Yes. Okay, we have some questions here. Hi, I'm an RBT working with a 3-year-old. He will be going into school for the first time, being in a setting with others that aren't family. He still drinks from a bottle. Mom also has him very used to doing everything for him. I am worried about him and would like to help him with the transition. So, thank you so much for this question. Before we answer this, because you are saying that you're an RBT, I want to say that the first person that you should go to is your BCBA, because I don't want to override I don't want any angry BCBAs like knocking at my door and saying like, why did you tell my RBT this? So always go to your BCBA first. Hopefully you are getting, the supervision that you should be getting. But Priya, just kind of like something around this. Like what are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts is, as an RBT, we can do some role-playing scenarios, right? He's starting school really soon, so maybe you can help him with some of the transitions, like, oh, let's pretend we're getting ready for school in the morning. You're gonna put your backpack on. Maybe you could do some social stories or read some books for what being at school is like. And then maybe start stepping in and advocating for him to do things more independently. Like, okay, school's starting. with my client, I had to kind of do this about her like fixing her hair because her hair is always a mess. And I was like, oh, well, kindergarten's starting, so we're gonna have to start brushing our hair in the morning and kind of just working at it like that, little what we can before school starts, kind of prepping him as much as we can.
Yeah, and sometimes I think when parents see that the child is able to do it on their own, they kind of let go, right? I think that initial let me do it for you is because they think that the child doesn't have the skills. But if you're able to help the child develop these skills, as Priya was stating, like brushing her hair or whatever it is, and the parent sees this and they're able to do it. But also parent coaching is a must. You know, everyone should be working in collaboration together. So that's really important as well. Let's go to our next question. Students are students are sometimes trying to get attention from the teachers. They act like if they don't know how to do something independently when they actually do. Teachers should identify if there's actually a lack of the skill or if they're just attention seeking. Very good points. Absolutely. What do you think about this?
We address this head on in ABA. Is it a performance problem or a skill deficit? Yeah. Right. And if we just keep on going in and doing it for them, we're reinforcing that behavior of them not doing it. Are they trying to escape the assignment itself? Maybe we can break it down, right? Okay, let's do these 5 problems instead of the 25. Because we're trying to see if they're able to complete the problems, right? Oh, it looks small, take a short break. Okay, let's add some more in. Maybe we can, the way that we present the assignment can be a little bit different to kind of really address, is it that they don't want to complete the assignment because we're putting a worksheet in front of a 7-year-old, or is it that they don't know how to do it?
Yeah, I mean, another thing that, you know, if you know for a fact that this child, and when the teachers are first meeting the new children coming in, you may not know what their functions are. You may not know what the functions of their behaviors are, because obviously you're kind of taking baseline. That's really what you're doing, getting to know them. But after you already suspect like, this child knows this, and I think he's doing it to get my attention, I would provide attention for other behaviors that they do independently, right? Because again, this child wants to get your attention. Let's give them attention by what we want them to increase and not what we want them to stop doing, in other words. So, you know, when they do something alone, wow, you were able to do that on your own. You're super smart. Good job. You know, something like that. You know, or maybe something like, you know, like pivotal praise. Wow, I see little Benny over there who is, you know, writing on his own. Good job, or whatever. Like things like that, I think are also important.
And like, if they're after the attention, you can create more appropriate opportunities for attention. Like, okay, like whoever does X, Y, and Z can be the person to pass out the papers today. Little things where they get the attention in class, or like, okay, you can be the person to give out this or take the garbage or something, where they get a little extra attention on them, but in a more appropriate way.
Yeah, perfect. We have another question. Are there specific activities or programs that can enhance social engagement for children? So what kind of activities, let's say that there's a child in the classroom that is not really making any friends or not really engaging with others, what kind of activities can they do together? And teachers, help me out. Let me know what activities you guys have seen that have been helpful. But for you, Priya, working in the schools, what have you seen that has worked?
So if we're looking at like elementary school children, getting them to play in an interactive like game of some sort, a board game, some kind of outside game, maybe soccer, something where they're either playing in a team or they can kind of get into it, right? I really like the board game Sorry, because it's like, oh, sorry, and you could play it too, right? Hey, who wants
you can make some enemies in that game too.
You can also make enemies, but you know,
frenemies.
More opportunity to practice the social skills, the better. Uno, Sorry, even with like that parachute thing they really like.
Yeah.
If they're younger, Zingo is a fun one. Yeah. Just like games that kids have to interact. Interact to do.
Yeah, and I think also, like, if you see that there's a child who's more of a loner, sometimes like pairing them with other children. Like I worked with briefly with this child in the school, And he had difficulties engaging with the kids because the kids already knew that he was a hitter. So he would like be aggressive towards them. Obviously, the kids didn't want to interact with him. So I started doing like, whenever we would go to like recess, I would start saying like, okay, guys, let's play hide and go seek. He's gonna count this and that, so kind of engage them in these activities where they have to play together, or even pairing them with another child. Look, like this is a child that you can play with, and this child can kind of like help you with him, So I think that those things are also things that you can do in that situation.
I also feel like if it's your child, maybe following their interest, right? Are they into sports? Then maybe put them in a sport. Are they into Legos? Maybe there's a Lego club where there's other people who are also into Legos, kind of following their natural interest, and finding them a social group that's suited to what they're naturally interested in. I know some parents are like, I want my kid to do this sport, but the kid has no interest in the sport. You know what I mean? And he doesn't engage with the team. He never wants to go.
Yes, perfect. All right, so let me see okay. How do we go about speaking about divorce to your child? So how do you speak about divorce? So I've had the situation happen several times. As we know, divorce is common, it happens. I think the number one thing, and every situation is completely different, but I think the number one thing is if both parents do have a good relationship, it's important that you first speak with each other about what you're going to speak to your child about, right? So what are the things that we're going to discuss? What are the things that we're going to say? So kind of like a pre-planned meeting prior to discussing the divorce with your child. I think that's the number one thing. When you do meet with your child and you guys are on the same page, you have to be honest. Obviously, you're going to exclude like the details. You don't have to say this one cheated on me and this happened. Like your child doesn't have to know the details, but be very clear and be very honest on what's going on, So like every relationship, sometimes one person does not get along with the other and these things happen. Also remind the child that your relationship with that child has nothing to do with your relationship with your husband or vice versa, right? Like, so I have a child, I have my own relationship with my child that is not contingent on my relationship with my husband. And that's going to continue no matter where we are, no matter what happens, that's going to continue. So kind of like reassuring them about that. And then if you know what's going to happen after the divorce in terms of like where you're going to live and what's going to happen, it's also important that you communicate that. Obviously, depending on the age, you're going to use certain words that they're going to understand more than others. And then the last part, which I think is so important, is that you ask your child, what questions do you have? Sometimes we just kind of dump the information. We're like, whoa, that was so difficult, thank God. And then the child's like, what the heck, man? I'm just left with all these questions now, and nobody asked me if I had any questions. So always follow up with what questions do you have? And don't say, do you have any questions? Because when you ask this close-ended question, they're just gonna say like no, or yes, or whatever. Ask them, what questions do you have? There, you're kind of prompting, I know you have some questions and I'm here to answer them. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, Priya, about divorce.
No, I think to let the child know that it's not their responsibility, that their relationships with the parents have nothing to do with the parents' relationships with each other, and opening the communication that what questions do you have? You can speak to me if you're feeling a way about it.
Right, yeah. So I don't know if anyone else has questions about divorce. I know it's like a big topic. It can be very awkward. It can be very emotional. It can be, a bunch of different things. And I think that sometimes parents that are in these chaotic relationships, they think about, oh my gosh, I'm going to split the family and this and that. I've worked with children where their parents are getting divorced and they come to see me. Over and over and over again, I get the same response where the child is like, I like that mom and dad are not fighting with each other anymore. I'd rather them be separated rather than be in the same house and have this chaotic relationship. And divorce is really not as bad as we anticipate it to be, as long as the parent still maintains the same type of relationship with the child.
Yeah. Keep your
All
business,
right.
keep the children.
Yeah. Okay, ideas when there is codependency that's turning unhealthy between classmates. What do you think about that? Codependency. So sort of like what I'm guessing you're saying is that when one child kind of like relies on the other and they have like this kind of like mutually codependent relationship that is unhealthy. Unhealthy, I'm guessing, is that it doesn't allow them to socialize independently or make their own choices, right? So what do you think, Priya?
I feel like sometimes you see clients, we see clients, you guys see students that are besties, you know, and they want to do everything together, but it's also okay to split them up sometimes. Pair them up with other people,
Yeah.
you know? Yes.
Okay, yes, to the point that they don't socialize with anyone else in the classroom. Yeah, so just what Priya just said, right? So it's not like we're like breaking a friendship, but have them do projects with other kids, have them, you know, interact with other kids and do different things. I think that that's important to expose them to that situation.
I think a lot of kids, they're naturally going to go towards what's familiar to them and what they like. And sometimes it takes adults showing them other opportunities and other situations for them to realize that they like other things too. Like maybe they make other friends or they have things in common with this person over here and they can add to the group of besties. You know what I mean? And they can be a little trio. Not that they should do everything together, but give them more opportunities to socialize with other people. Sometimes they won't like it and sometimes they'll just come around to it really quickly. But
Yeah,
it's
and even speaking, yeah, so even speaking, we spoke about the communication with the parents. I think perhaps bringing this up in a very nice way to the parents and also encouraging the parents to set up play dates, perhaps with other kids, with other children. Maybe they can set up play dates to the child's house with other kids, and that way that child can interact with others as well. Because usually when there is this codependency is what Priya said, right? I feel comfortable with this child and that's it. I really don't want to explore because maybe I'm scared of what's going to be out there. And then also working on those skills. If you see that this child is kind of like scared of meeting other kids or whatever it is, maybe they don't communicate like the others or whatever it is, working on those skills as well so they are able to then socialize with these other kids.
Yeah.
Good questions. Awesome questions. Okay, let's see. My daughter's having trouble making friends at school. How can I help her? She is 10.
So my first question is like, is this a new school? Is this a school she's been attending for a while that she has a history with these students that, you know, she hasn't been friends with? Or is it like she's a new student where she is having a hard time connecting with her peers?
Yeah. Also, I think that sometimes we have to ask and see if the child wants to have friends, if they want to make more friends. I think automatically we just think that we're all social beings and we want to like have this big friend group and whatever it is. And I've even had parents that are like, oh my gosh, my child has like 2 best friends and that's it. They don't I'm like, okay, what's the issue? Like they just want to like, you know, chill with 2 friends. So I think we have to first identify whether the child wants to make more friends, whether they want to interact, and then see what the issue is. I think this question is like very generalized, but we have to break it down to see why they're not making friends. Is it because they don't want to? Is it because they're being, you know, people are speaking about them? Is it like, what is it that doesn't allow them to make more friends if they do want to make friends?
We always got to come to the source.
Yes.
Why are they behaving the way that they are?
Absolutely. Let's go to our second sheet of questions. And again, you guys can jot them down here in the chat, ask any questions you have, comments, anything, just not complaints, please. All right, next question. My husband doesn't do what I do. How can we get in the same page? What do you think, Priya?
I think you have to identify the goal, team child,
Yeah.
right? You have to remember what you're working for and remember that it's all about compromise. One person doesn't need to be right over the other. Try to find a sweet spot in the middle.
Yes, absolutely. I think that if you both focus on, okay, what is our goal? You will both have the same goal, right? For either the child to become independent or for the child or the adolescent or whoever it is, to have more friends or to, enhance their academics, whatever it is. Usually we have like the same goals, we're just going about it in different ways. So I really like that team child, because when we are really thinking about our kids, we stop thinking about, oh, my husband doesn't want to do this because he got mad at me the other day or something, right? So it kind of like refocuses our energy. And again, if you're finding difficulties doing it on your own, you don't have to. There's so like therapy is so widely accepted, is so widely accessible nowadays. Go to a therapist. There's co-parenting, right? Co-parenting is not only for divorced parents, but also for parents that are on separate pages that want to get on the same page and want to parent or use the same parenting style. So go to a therapist that specializes in co-parenting, and you don't have to do it on your own.
I also would love to throw in there that sometimes if you guys know about the feedback sandwich, sometimes it works out with your own partner / significant other, where you want to tell them that something they're doing maybe isn't in the best interest of the child, or they're not going about it the right way. But sometimes giving them a little something sweet on top with the feedback and then something sweet at the end will let it be received a little bit better. So like, I love that you're trying and I see that you're trying, but X, Y, and Z, but we really appreciate everything that you're doing.
And again, you have to know your spouse. Sometimes that works great. Other times it can bite you back, where they may use it towards you and then you're like, oh. But definitely, I think conversations have to have a mix of positive things, and then the challenges, right? It can't just be like all bad, 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 because then that person becomes resistant. All right, another question here in the chat. What role can parents play in reinforcing school routines at home? And perhaps this is more about like general routines, right? So, well, first of all, let me ask you, Priya, do you think that routines are needed? Or
Yes.
what are the benefits?
I think routines are great. Routines help everybody be on the same page. It gives the child an idea of what to look forward to and when the work they have to do and when they have time to play, right? Like, okay, I'm going to school in the morning. There could be a fight in the morning. Get up, do this. It's like, or we could have 7 o'clock, we wake up. First thing we do is brush our teeth. Then we eat breakfast and then we get dressed for the day. Every day is the same thing. So when there's resistance, it's like, listen, we do the same thing every day. Coming home, we unpacked. Listen, once you unpack your backpack, then you can relax for the rest of the day. But every day we come home and we unpack. Having routines like that, because when they go to school, they have routines too. You come in, you take your backpack off, you put your stuff in your cubby, you do this, you do that. They know what to expect. It helps things run a little bit smoother.
Exactly. And this is honestly for the parents that are listening. If you don't know this, I'm going to tell you, routines are magic. If you set up a good routine, the behaviors will flow on their own. Like everyone knows exactly what they have to do, what comes next. There's no like, oh my gosh, what do I do for this? No, like everyone knows that the same, your kids will even like go take a shower by themselves, believe it or not, if you have the routine set up. Obviously, the routine doesn't have to be like 100%, right? Like my routine, for example, with my kids is that they go to sleep at like 7. Today, they stayed up a little later because they were playing with friends outside. A little later, I mean like 15 minutes. But that's fine. It's not the end of the world, right? It doesn't have to be followed like that. But as much as possible, if you can keep that routine, it will definitely be magic. And also for parents, you know what to expect after. You can plan your night. You can plan what to do after. So definitely routines are super important.
Or start your day off on a positive note that everything ran smoothly.
Yeah. Exactly. RBT, for those asking, is for registered behavior technician. So that's what an RBT is. Someone was asking about RBT. Let me see other questions. Okay. I live in Broward and they're not letting my RBT going to the school. Any tips? I haven't worked in a lot of Broward schools, so this is more for Priya. Tell us what you know, Priya.
So I do have a badge with the Broward County Schools, and in my experience, it's very much school by school, teacher by teacher case. Some teachers have past experience with RBTs or ABA where they think that they know what to expect when they come in, or maybe they've run into a bad practitioner. Maybe the school has very strict guidelines where the principal doesn't like it. There is some legal things about they have to allow us into schools. You have to into public schools. In my experience, private schools are very open and welcoming to a lot more therapists than public schools. So my first thing is have the parents communicate with the teachers, right? And open the conversation like, listen, this is a therapist, this is what they work on, this is how it's going to help you out with your job in your class. Because the teachers themselves have a fair amount of pull. They can speak to their principals, they can speak to the special education coordinators. The other thing is the therapist just has to go in and just have to prove themselves sometimes. Once they go in and they show that they can be helpful, it could be reinforcing. But to get into the schools to begin with, the parent and the teacher have to communicate, and the parent has to advocate for their child, right? To make the teacher want to advocate for the child.
Right.
There are IEPs and things like that they do have to withhold and follow through on, but it can be difficult depending on the school.
And keep in mind that if you are a parent that has a commercial insurance, some commercial insurances do not allow you to provide therapy sessions in the school, Aetna being one of them. We've been able to have RBTs go in, but it has to be very severe behaviors. So depending on the commercial insurance, some of them will not allow will not pay basically for the RBT to go into the school as well.
Yeah. But sometimes they can be a little bit more flexible if you can have like a RBT or a therapist come in towards the end of the day. Because usually towards the end of the day, they're kind of winding things down, and a lot of the instruction is the beginning and a half of the day. So that's something to actually take into consideration too.
Perfect. We have another question here in the chat. My child has a hard time focusing on tasks. He has ADHD, inattentive, and he has been seeing an OT the last year. And I feel like he made a lot of progress in May, but now he has regressed. I don't know if it's because it's gotten harder or a new school year. I don't know how to teach him to focus. Focus is one of those things that it's really hard to teach, more so if you already have an ADHD diagnosis, because I mean, part of the symptomology more so of ADHD inattentive type is that you have a hard time to focus. There are different different tips that you can do. For example, one thing that I use like with my own child is that, you know, I kind of have him acknowledge, I ask him, I'm like, hey, where's your mind going, right? I see you, I see your mind drifting off. Where is your mind going? Because I want him to understand that, okay, his mind is drifting off, and I want him to become aware of that on his own. And then once I do that, say, okay, let's try to bring it back and, you know, use like a code or a word that you tell yourself in order to focus, like something like focus now, or be here, or whatever that word is that you guys have spoken about beforehand. And then the child uses that word to kind of bring himself back. And then with ADHD, we want them to do a lot of self-management. What does that mean? That we want them to use these skills when you're not there, because you're not always going to be there to tell them, okay, come on, time to focus. So you want them to kind of like catch themselves drifting off and then bring themselves back to this task because it's more important. And then to kind of have this keyword that they can use. So that's just one intervention that I've used. Priya, I'm not sure what you would recommend in this situation.
For in this situation, he made a lot of progress and now, so did he go to summer camp over the summer, or was he kind of home with kind of open access to everything? Sometimes it takes a little bit to get back into the mode of school where it's like, okay, now we have to sit in our desk. Now we have to wait for other people too, not just ourselves. A summer camp for like 5 weeks. Okay. So now he's going back into the school setting for the first time. For me, I like visuals, right? Little reminders. I've even had clients write themselves little reminders, like if I'm talking, then I'm not listening, right? I had a client put that on the corner of his desk, a little schedule to remind them of what they're supposed to be doing when, and maybe a little to-do list for the task so that they can, when they come home, they remember, okay, first I have to do my homework, and then I have to take my dog for a walk, and then I need to do this. What do you think, Dr. Gilbert?
Yeah, I was writing it here as well, that I'm not sure if the child has a psychoeducational evaluation, but this is like really important, more so when the child is diagnosed with ADHD. We want to get a full psychoeducational evaluation because we want to know if there is like a learning disorder in addition to what's going on. We want to know also, what part of their, I like doing like IQ testing, for example. Like we do psychoeducation evaluations all the time in our practice, but I love seeing them because they don't just tell you what the IQ score is, but they tell you what the child is good at, right? So spatial reasoning or vocabulary or whatever it is, and then you can use that as some of their strengths that will help them throughout the school year. So super important to know how to read that psychoeducation evaluation. And if a psychologist did it, then have them give you that feedback, but also tell them to outline what the child's strengths are, because sometimes they forget to do that. So I think all those things also help. And then sometimes you may need someone to come in. You may need someone to come in and, help the child or help the teacher, or, break information into smaller parts or whatever it is. So use like some of those accommodations to help the child.
Yeah, and self-management is huge. Their own coping skills for maybe feeling fidgety or maybe some exercise to get out some of the jitter. I know it's the focusing problem, but kind of setting the child up for success for when he's sitting down and trying to focus too. Make sure he's not eating too much sugar, he's not too up. There's a lot of things that can go into it.
Yeah, also reinforcers go a long way. Reinforcers, I'm telling you guys, reinforcers go a long way. If you tell your child, if you focus on this task and the next task or whatever it is, and then at the end of it, which I'm not telling you guys to do this, right? But just so you understand the magnitude of reinforcers. At the end of this, I'm going to take you to like, I don't know, Disney World or something huge. Don't you think he's going to focus? Most of the time they will put their effort and try their hardest to do that. Again, I'm not telling you guys to do that because that's not reasonable, but there is a power to using a strong reinforcer to help the child focus.
And sometimes gonna be first, we have to do this, and then you get to do this.
Exactly. So we have another question here. This is our last question that I collected, but you guys can still ask us questions here. We have a couple of minutes to go. So jot down your questions very quickly in the chat. Our last question is parents experiencing higher stress and how to deal with it better in start for school. So parents that are already, I guess, experiencing higher stress, how do they deal with it? And how do they deal with it, I guess, better with the start of the new school year? Like, how do you cope with that stress? What do you think? So I think the first thing is that, again, I'm always going to say this, you should definitely always seek therapy if you think that you have it and the stress becomes so much that you just cannot deal with it, right? There's always help that you can find. A really good, well, we provide therapy sessions ourselves, but a really good place where I can also recommend that you guys go to Psychology Today. Psychology Today has all therapists from all over the place. You can take a look at their profile. I'm also there, and you can contact them, and you can see if they take your insurance and what they specialize in. So super important to get help if you do have those stressors. So that is one thing I can recommend. Priya, I don't know if you have anything else.
The other thing is to just try to prepare yourself as much as you can. Don't leave everything for the morning of, or don't leave everything for the week of. Try to break it down into smaller things so you get the reinforcement of, I completed this task.
Also, this is going to sound like super simple, but honestly, don't forget to have fun, because I feel like we're so stressed all the time because it's not that you're going to just dismiss like everything that's going on. But I saw this meme and it reminded me of this. It was like, it was one of those funny memes. And it was like this guy in Barcelona and the beach. And he was like, they said that, you're stressed, you're still going to have stress, even if you're in a beach in Barcelona, but he's there like having fun, right? And it's absolutely like that. Like, do something fun, do something that allows you to also have that other piece. So the entirety of everything you do during the day doesn't have to be filled with stress. The stress is still going to be there. If you take an hour away, it's going to be okay. So, I think you have to continue to have fun and also have your hobbies and also have your things, even though you are a parent, as much as you're able to, of course. Make time for yourself. Any last words about that, Priya?
No, I think that's great. Thank
Okay.
you for all those big points.
So, questions, any other questions you guys have before we log off? Any comments? Anything you found productive? So just a reminder for those of you who are just coming in, you can go to this QR code. So just go through this QR code and then you can be part of our community. You'll get one newsletter a month. I promise I won't bug you anymore. Usually it's good information, I must say. And we also do these webinars once a month, completely free. You can share with others around you as well. And we're just here to help and, answer your questions. Thank you. Thank you. My son goes to Montessori. I'm concerned with the fact that they don't have much homework, so I feel that it is not enough. So I mean, I would bring that up to, there's nothing that I can do, I'm sorry. I would bring that up to, the person in charge, and perhaps they can help with that. I know that sometimes there is concern with not having enough homework. Some people are complaining because there is too much homework. So I think it's just something, that has to be really discussed with the school. How can we control devices on our children? Okay, now I'm getting tons of questions. Okay, we have a couple minutes, so we're gonna try to do this quickly. How can we control devices on our children? I actually, there was a parent who asked me about this, and I wanna just, come in here and just discuss this really quickly. So I think one of the important things is, what does your child have to do instead of the devices, right? I think as parents, sometimes parents are like, oh, I'm just gonna take the device out, and then your child's like in a corner like this, right? Make sure that you have things that they can do. Let's go outside and play. Let's do this. If your child's going outside to play, if they're doing other enriching activities in their own home, they're not gonna even have time to go on their device, right? So I think that's the number one thing. Like, what are they doing when they're not in their devices is a better question. Also, parents' behaviors. If you're on your device all the time, your child's going to be like, hey, how come you're doing it and I'm not? Of course, you're the parent and you put the rules, but you're giving them that example. So I think as parents as well, we have to cool down with, our devices and go out there and do more fun things with them. What do you have to say, Priya?
I think you make a great point about the parents' behaviors too. I have a 7-year-old client that I work with, and his dad made a rule: no games and no devices at the table, but he plays solitaire on his phone the entire dinner. So his son was like, Daddy, I thought no devices at the table. And he goes, well, you're the kid and I'm the adult. But it's like, why exactly does he want to do it?
Right.
He sees you doing it. And he's like, why can't I bring my iPad and play my game?
And again, if your child doesn't have the iPad, he's speaking to a father who's on his game. So what kind of conversation are they going to be having? Like the child's just gonna be like, I don't want to talk to you, I just want to go on my device because you're on your device, right? So we have to make it more enriching outside of the devices.
Kids always know if you're paying attention.
Absolutely. They'll ask you like trick questions and you're like, what? What did you say? Anyways, thank you all for coming. Priya, thank you so much for being part of this. I know you probably worked all day. You're such a great, hard worker. But thank you so much for helping with this. I loved having you here. And, we did this a little bit different. We always have like more of like a strict thing. And today was just like a Q&A, answering some of these questions you guys have. But that's it. If you have any follow-up questions, let me know. We already recorded this. So for those of you who weren't able to make it, you're viewing it now. And that's it. Let us know if you have any questions. Good night, everyone.
Good night.